The Bitter Suns. The Bitter Suns are a band of iron warriors whose sole purpose in training and in warfare is to deconstruct enemy emplacements brick by brick if necessary. The Siege Masters have a wide variety of tools to be able to get through and break any walls their enemies may feel safe behind. However, no tool is as effective as the Lord of Iron himself, who has yet to be defeated when faced with a fortress of any kind. Perhaps it would take the Solar Lords themselves to bring this mighty foe's streak of victories to a crushing end. So this week it is the Bitter Suns, otherwise known to the wider populace of Warhammer as the Iron Warriors. Today we'll be covering what I've got in my army, what I started with, how I started, and why I chose the Lords of Iron themselves, the Iron Warriors. So the 4th Legion are one of quite a popular choice in Horus Heresy. They're a force that a lot of people like, purely because I think they're, well, I know they are very, I think a lot of people choose them because they like how sort of it's a shooting army. It's, you know, it's a very much a stand and shoot as much as possible. It's not sort of the best at melee, but it's a very powerful army with access to one of the most powerful units in game, in my opinion. Now that unit is actually the Tyrant Siege Terminators, and they are a formidable foe if you come against them in combat, with them being Terminators, and in shooting. You're going to be looking at getting rid of some of your tanks if they decide they don't want them on the battlefield anymore. Now, I chose the Iron Warriors sort of more as an enjoyment process. I thought that I would enjoy painting the metal and having like a rusty sort of iron look to them. And while that was true, I did enjoy painting the metal. I didn't actually get around to painting the army that I built until contrast paints came out. Now, I'd had this army for a while. I got it just after I did the Obsidian Hunters, the Night Lords, but the Iron Warriors were my next Horus Heresy army after the Tale of Gamers. So it was sort of, I got them really because I thought the Iron Circle Domitar were some of the coolest models that you could get. You know, these sort of huge battle automata with the shield that could basically be a wall for an Imperial citizen. They're carrying around the biggest slab shield out there, really. It's pretty impressive that Perturabo has a cohort of these as his own bodyguard, and that's one of the coolest things then that I looked into, the fact that Perturabo himself has this maniple of this group of Iron Circle Domitar walking around with him, protecting him, being his bodyguard, and in some of the books as well, the bits with Perturabo have been amplified by the threat of the fact that his Iron Circle Domitar are stood right next to him. The Iron Circle are around him pretty much all the time, and I know in the Siege of Terror it's mentioned briefly that it's just the fact that it's an automata and you can't see its face and you can't see what it's thinking is just such a daunting thing for some Space Marines that encounter them. And I sort of wanted to paint up a couple, so I actually got a couple of the Iron Circle before I moved to London. So I've had these for quite a while, and when I'd painted them originally with the sort of spray Leadbelcher, Agrex Earthshade, and then Drybrush Necron Compound style, I thought, this is going to be so cool and so easy to paint up an army like this. So I bought the rest of the models, lots of Mark IIIs. I made a couple of sort of unique character models. I also got some autocannons to replicate the artworks, and I set to work. I built them up, got them in a box, and then promptly forgot about them or moved on to something else. I think I moved on to Eldar for 7th edition because I think we jumped back to to Warhammer 40,000, but nevertheless the Iron Warriors were just sat in a box for a while, and it wasn't until a Warhammer community post of the Traitor Legions in Contrast came, where it showed that if you spray if you spray a Space Marine in Leadbelcher, you could then Basilicanum Grey all over it, do the trim, and it was pretty much done. Just add some hazards and some, black panels here and there and stuff. And I thought, you know what? I've got a lot of Iron Warrior models that need painting. Why not follow this paint scheme, and why not do it so that they're done with, the new paints that have come out? And I really cracked on. I think it was either just before or just in the start of Lockdown 1, where I thought, you know what, I'll get through as many of my Iron Warriors as I can. And I painted up a Praetor, which I converted from, I think, about 7 different kits. I got the Grandmaster Voldus, the Grey Knight's hammer. I got one of him for his hammer. I got different bolt guns, bits from different Space Marine captains and champions and stuff, and I got a Imperial Guardsman with a sword, and I cut off his sword so I could make like a chainsword attachment to his bolter, just to give it, sort of an Iron Warriors feel, like they've bolted extra bits on to make it so that whatever happens, they're prepared for whatever might come out of a fortress that they're sieging. I also have a metal Warpsmith because it's one of the retro cool models that I enjoy collecting, the models that are the retro ones. I've got an old Bloodthirster model that by no right would be counted as a Bloodthirster anymore. It'd probably be a Demon Prince, but it's just one of those models that has a fond place in my heart for the age, for sort of admiring it when I was younger, and I'm keen on getting these models just in my armies if I can. And yeah, the Warpsmith was one that I sort of converted in. Well, I didn't really convert him. I obviously use him as and when, but I can use him as a consul of some sort, a centurion perhaps. So yeah, I've got a Warpsmith, and I've also put together a plasma gun squad. So the sergeant has a plasma pistol, and then there's 4 plasma guns. The sergeant also has a power fist, where I think it was the first thing that I actually painted with hazards, which was something that I actually really enjoyed, which you'll probably know if you've seen my Titans. I do enjoy hazards, painting Legio Ignatum, but this was before I'd painted Legio Ignatum, so it's quite nice that I got the chance to be able to practice a little bit and learn what would be best for how to paint hazards, and whether which side the highlights would go on, or what would look best to do. I also converted up some Tyrant Siege Terminators. Yeah, the Forge World models are beautiful, but the new Chaos Space Marine models, the Terminators there, I just thought they looked, just that bit more imposing. They're a little bit taller than the old Terminators, so I thought, I'll get some missile pods and stick them on the carapace, and we've got some Tyrant Siege Terminators where I've converted their combi bolters up and got power fists from other sets and stuff like that. So yeah, I've got a squad of 5 of them, but I've still got 5 more of the missile pods for the carapace, so I can still make another 5, so I can have a 10-man squad. I've also got the Tormentor, so a Shadow Sword, I think it is, one that Perturabo can ride around in. I've got one of those just because it's cool. You have a transport for the Primarch that is one of the biggest tanks that you can get. That's you're not going to not do that, are you? It's a pretty cool thing to have. And I converted up a couple of Predators as well. I gave sort of a makeover to one from some Mechanicum bits that I've got that we had in the studio. So I added in sort of a tank with a cool turret that's a bit different to the normal Predator cannon, just to give them sort of a bit of variety, and something like they're trying to advance their own technologies a bit. because, you know, they've turned against the Emperor, so what do they care if the Emperor says you shouldn't be doing that? So yeah, I've got a little bit of a tank side and some rhinos for them as well, for some of the troops. I do have, I think, 30 troops, just standard troops. There aren't many photos on the website at the moment, but it'll be something that, you know, they're a project that's done that I actually really enjoyed, and, you know, it looks cool if I were to get them out and start painting them up, start photographing them up again for content. They're a model set that would just look good in any environment. The one that I've actually taken the photos of was in the Crucible of the Damned, which is their makeshift fortress that I made out of Necromunda gang hideout sets and Necromunda bits, and just to make it so it was like a knockoff of the Imperial Fortress that we've got for the studio. So yeah, that was a lot of fun as well. What else? Oh yeah, and I've got the Lord of Iron himself on the website. You can see I've actually got Perturabo himself stood upon a House Tyrannus Knight. Before I decided my colour scheme was going to be black instead of white, I painted a House Tyrannus Knight with white shoulder pads, which, you know, it might be cool to get that, find out what knight it is that he stood on exactly, and get that knight and paint one up so that I've got the knight that he's actually stood on, and then that will just add a little bit more of a link between them. And in the final picture on our website, you can actually see Perturabo with his 2 Iron Circle Domitar stood behind him, and those shields are just some of the coolest things, I think, in Horus Heresy. And it's a shame that Warhammer 40,000 doesn't actually have, you know, the access to the Iron Circle Domitar. Well, I don't think it does. It might do now. In 9th edition, the index, the compendium for Forge World might include them, but I don't think so. But yeah, no, some of the coolest things that I think are in the 40k, in the 30k universe and model range. So yeah, they're definitely something that I would love to add to down the line. But you know, Iron Warriors are one of these armies that, now that I've got the Imperial Fortress, if I do an Imperial Fist contingent for that Imperial Fortress, which I've wanted to do, then, you know, it would be cool to have, you know, Minion or Croydon play as the Iron Warriors, and actually have the Bitter Sons versus, you know, the defenders of the Imperial Palace. So yeah, that's definitely something that would be on the cards if the Imperial Fists army actually came into fruition, but yet to find a yellow spray can to sort of make it so it's a bit easier than having to hand paint 40 Space Marine, Tactical Marines, and then Terminators as well, and, you know, tanks, and yeah, there's a lot of work, and unfortunately I just don't have the time at the moment to focus on a new army like that. So yeah, so this one's been quite a fun one, actually. It's the first of the main traitor armies that we do here at Strategic Painting. I believe next week is going to be the Demons of the Runestorm, so that one's going to be a lot of fun to record. I'm looking forward to talking about my demons, because I've got a lot. Not as many as some of the other people that I know. Jarl has got tens of thousands of points, but it's going to be nice to talk about my smaller demon army, but larger in the sense of, you know, I've got a lot of big things, and Bloodthirsters and Keepers of Secrets and stuff like that. So yeah, well, this has been the Bitter Sons. Thank you very much for listening, and take care.